Okay, my dears. Well, first of all, that was super nice already. It was so nice to see everyone so invested in exchanging and talking. It makes me really emotional to see like everyone coming together and discussing already. And that's the work. So that's already a win. So now I'm really curious to see what was your summary. So before we talk point by point, we're gonna read all of them, okay? We won't have the time to go through everything. As you see, we finished at 12:30, but we invite everyone right after to continue the talk, to tell people and share it, okay? But for now, let's just hear all the summary of all the 4 groups.
Good. Okay, and I'm just going to make a quick technical interjection because you get to start, Charlie. So thanks. And then we're going to go here. Yeah, so we'll go first with Charlie, and then we're going to switch over and turn up the volume so that you can hear the spokesperson online, and then we'll go down the line with the rest of our awesome representatives of the group. Over to you.
Okay, nice to hello everyone. So our question was summarize how to support gender representative diversity and how to support their representation in circus industry. So we had several ideas, several topics. The first of all was diversity and representation of genders in companies. First of all, recruit through skills rather than gender, but having this will of representation and diversity in the core value of creation to make sure that having all the gender represented, and of course having the policy no discrimination. But at the core of this representation, the second, the origin was as a circus schools, because it is apparently a problem of diversity in circus schools. So it would be important to have for at least understanding teacher of the diversity of genders, maybe financial support, especially to marginalized population who mostly needs are in difficult situations. Maybe conditioning financial subventions from states to this diversity. And yeah, that's it for the second point. The third point, it is also the audience diversity, because if we manage to have a diversity and representation in shows, the thing is nowadays it's mostly white cisgender people who can afford the different shows. So it could be interesting to also have in circus industry the ability to welcome all classes of people, even lower income population. And fourth point, we talk about representations in festival like that, because the representation on stage is mostly white, mostly cisgender, and mostly male. And sorry, and yeah, and definitely we have to leverage artistic diversity to support all genders. I think that's it. My group, was it okay?
Well done.
And to summarize, we have it is a positive discrimination about gender in circus industry, in schools, and also for public audience and festivals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, the group.
Thanks for kicking us off. We're going to shift to the spokesperson online.
Okay. So we were talking about stereotypical cisgender gender binary representation in circus art, to summarize it. And one point that was brought out was that the programmers and presenters might see queer art as a risk, even though the public is more ready for it than the programmers and presenters think. RuPaul's Drag Race was used as an example of popular and normalized queer art. It was mentioned then that in Slavic countries, RuPaul is not normalized and queer art is nowhere to be seen, unfortunately. In Ukraine, even male-female sensual duos are out of the box. And in Mexico, it is similar with queer art. Then we talked a bit about circus universities. They were mentioned, and the resources and privilege needed to get into the circus school in the first place. It was mentioned that most of graduating students are male, and was also mentioned that there's no art grants in Mexico. I put this in a wrong bracket, but it's okay, it's there. It was mentioned that in Cirque de Demain, the gender binary and stereotypes are very strong still after many years of people speaking about it. And it's really pity and shame to see because there's so much diverse queer art and diverse cultural queer art that could come if there would be more resources and if something were to be done about this. And that's our conversation. I posted in the chat so you can read it if you want. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, thanks for participating in a modified form as compared to what we have here. We're really, really delighted that you're with us. And thanks for that summary.
Yes, thank you, Ed. That was so well articulated. It was very clear, so it gave me goosebumps. Thank you so much.
Hi. We had a very interesting group, which was great. They brought a lot, so we're really
Alors, on commence.
So one of our questions was he or she. How should we call someone whom we don't know? So we had a long discussion on this one, took most of our time, but we had a lot of different cultures also that we're working with in my group. And the first bullet point we had was we really need to re-educate what the thinking was in the past. Our older generation is used to something completely different. So getting that education out there so everybody can be on the same page is super important. Then we ran into a wall that not every culture is the same. We had a few different cultures in my group. I'm going to bring up 3 specifically, Ethiopian, German, and then we had some Arabic in there as well. So we really need to be sensitive to language barriers and cultural differences. So it's not common in those cultures at all. They don't even have the word for it because it's illegal. So bridging that gap because they're interested in learning, but finding that middle ground where it's comfortable for everyone is also really important. And the education, since it's illegal in some of these countries, they're struggling with how do we educate our artists to then bring them to America or Canada where it is the social norm. How do we educate them? Do we wait until they're in the situation or do we educate them in a country where it's illegal? So that was a very difficult question and discussion that I think needs more eyes and brains on it to help bridge that gap. But just making sure that we're all sensitive to every culture out there. And then language differences too, even with, we talked about email signatures. So a big thing that's opening in America is us opening that gap to being the first line of communication and our email signatures opening up with, I would say she, her in my email signature. So hopefully it creates a calming ground for someone else to say theirs to me. So that would be a good way for them to help bridge that gap in some sort of way. Another point with that is positioning yourself first, which is another way with the email signature, or opening with a safe ground for someone, a calming situation. And then again, creating bridges between the cultures and the humans we have within it all over the world. Just being very sensitive to all that we have here and all that those countries do bring to us with circus, and helping each other understand one another is very important.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
so we only did one question, and it was, and it was, should there be percentages of like genders and things like that in shows, and should it be like a set percentage, like 20% of this, 20% of that, whatever. And we came to different conclusions that like we said personal stories are important, and there should be the like conduct for the selection. I'm not sure I'm presenting my team very well. And that it should start earlier than, like, it should start in schools and things like that, like early on, so that afterwards as well, in like casting and for festivals and things like that, there's more representation in general in all artists. That it's hard to put set quotas against like the quality of the work of people. And I think it comes back a little bit to if you start early on, then you have more possibility to have like variety to choose from. And then it's like we said that there's like it's mindfulness to have in general, and not just like have super set quotas and things like that to achieve, but just to keep it in mind at all time, basically, because in all aspects, in all like programming, casting, at schools and everything, if you start with like having it in mind and wanting to do better, then any small action is better than like trying to set like super strict rules that would maybe not necessarily work because the contexts are so different and various and things like that. I think that was it. And I don't know if I did it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is going to be quite difficult because we had a very big brainstorm coming, mainly coming from a point of curiosity. So we focused on one main long several question card, which I'm going to translate now, which says, for me, the word circus, in the world circus, my own world circus, gender didn't have much of an importance. It was a question of weight shifting of whoever felt comfortable doing things. When did these things change? In circus, usually it used to be people that did not have their place in society that were integrated. So we started from delving from a historical point of view, which is that circus generally back in the days was a place for marginal people, be it freaks, be it transgender people. It was kind of this big hub of, oh, you don't fit in, come along with us. And the question now here is, in history, did we really address questions of social integrity, or were we putting marginal people aside? Today, it seems like we've only gone somewhat of the way, being that transgender people, there is this idea of a rift sometimes being, their visibility is sometimes confined to the cabaret world. There's there's things that need to be done in terms of assertion. And that can mainly come and be explained by being people that finance circus today are still mainly white cisgender people. And how do we work through that? How do we shift through giving visibility and letting things flow and not confining them somewhat, or saying, oh, there's transgender people, well, there's this cabaret feeling, or it has to be something big and exuberant. And it seems like we can do more, and yet it's an open question. We have no answers here. Second point is we started thinking, well, a lot of times our disciplines are dictated by our gender. Be it, clown, it's a very gendered role. It's never the same when, you try and shift genders in the clown world. And then one of the people in a group said, well, if we really look back, take Mongolia. People in Mongolia, it used to be the men that were contortionists. And yet that changed radically throughout the years. And how do schools today address that change? Is there a flexibility in the discipline? Do we choose our disciplines because we have an assigned gender? How do we progress through that? So it's just a lot of very open questions.
Very good ones, though.
Yeah, we have no answer.
Yeah. I have to hold myself in this chair so much now. I'm oh my God. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was great.
Thank you to the group for providing questions.
Thanks, everyone. I think what is evident is a little bit what we started off by saying, which is not a cop-out, it's not an excuse. Really, this should just lead to more questions, but we also really invite, I'm going to sit, but I might end up sticking to it. That's how warm I am.
I am going. There was a time. I'm not talking about you.
Woe is us. Yeah, what we're talking about now is what can we do? What small action can we do by virtue of having met somebody new, by having had a conversation or a provocation in your thought process? What can you do? What can you help talk about? What can you bring forward? How do we move the ball down the field? Do something. Talk more. Just keep it going. That's the only piece I feel I have any actual control over. I did hear some really interesting stuff, one of which was core values. And I think it came from this group, but I think it actually was founded in a lot of the conversations. Things like holding true to those values and holding steadfast, being vocal about them, making them your North Star. We all have a moral compass and it shouldn't all be the same, but we need to be really aware and really open and mindful that we are listening, that we're curious as it came up, that we approach all of these quite difficult, sensitive, sometimes awful, sometimes joyful subjects, issues, real-time events, experiences, that we don't put our head in the sand. That's really the goal here. That's what we wanted to get kicked off in this space under the banner of this festival.
How do we make all of this? How do we make a step, right? I can speak from my own experience. I've done quite a lot the last years to be included and to be part of things. And I was lucky enough to have Cirque de Demain embracing me and embracing my transition together with No Fit State. I've crossed so many great people on the way, but I've also crossed really many bad people in the industry. And we're gonna always cross great and good people. And my biggest advice to all of you is like, don't be silent. No, don't be silent when you see things. Don't be silent when someone is marginalized in this industry, because that's not circus. Circus is inclusivity, and circus saved us. All of us here, we all are so different than others. Look at you, like we're all so different. So the stage should be different. I get emotional because it's my journey, you know, and it's my life there. And I think we should always stand for each other. It's not about making credible rules at the end. It's about changing the beginning. It's about discussing between you guys at school, you know, like when we have, what is wrong with the circus schools? It's an art school. We should have enough space in freedom of speech, you know? It's not about putting people again in the box, you know, like we speak 5 languages, guys. I speak 5 languages. It's not that hard to learn about gender. You know what I mean? And talking to face to each one of you here, you're also open-minded, you know, like it's not one person that represents a whole company, but it takes a group to change an institution. Be mindful. Thank you so much for being here.